And the Indiana Pacers get back on the winning track, taking down the Miami Heat 119 to 110. It was a great game from all of the starters after they got benched in the second half against the Miami Heat on Friday night. So good to see them bounce back. Myles Turner led the way, a season high for him, 34 points and 9 rebounds. Pascal Siakam, 23 points on 9 of 11 shooting. Benedict Mathurin, another double-double for him, 21 points and 12 rebounds. And Tyrese Haliburton didn't have a great shooting night, but still 16 points, 13 assists, and 0 turnovers. So a very good game for your Pacers starters. And here to talk with me about this game is not Michael J. Facci, because he is celebrating his 33rd birthday today. So happy birthday, Michael Facci. Make sure you guys give him a shout out on social media at _FACCI. But I've got Carson Stafford and David Cole here with me to talk about this game. So Carson, it's been a minute since we've chatted. How are you doing?
Doing great. Anytime you can get a Colts win and a Pacers win in the same day, it's going to be a good day.
Yeah, it feels great. IU basketball looked really good last night, too, against South Carolina on Saturday. So, hey, you know what? Indiana sports is thriving, and Kurt Cignetti just signed a new contract with a massive payday and said, Indiana Hoosiers football is a powerhouse. He is here to stay. He's not leaving. So, if you're an Indiana sports fan, you have to be happy unless you like Purdue. So, their guys don't even know where the end zone is because they're catching the ball out of bounds. But anyway, David Cole, of course, joined me a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. So he is back. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You did leave off one thing off of Mr. Kurt Cignetti's resume is that he's what like top 3 or 4 in presidential votes from the last election in Indiana. So
Yeah.
definitely keep that in check there.
Yeah, I think he got like 400 and something votes. So, I mean,
Significant.
significant. Signetti. Magnificent, right? However you want to put that there together. But this game right here, it was a fun one, right? A lot of interesting stuff to dive into because this Miami Heat team, they never once led in the entire game. They did tie it a few times, especially in the fourth quarter late. But Tyrese Haliburton hit 2 back-to-back big threes in the fourth to kind of give the Pacers a separation they needed. Then Myles Turner had a massive one in the corner after Tyler Hero came down and hit another 3. So it was just really good late game execution by the Pacers, which has been kind of a problem for them early in the season. But 13 games in, 6-7, they win this one by 9 points. I'll start with you first, Carson. Where do you want to start? Which player stood out to you the most in this game?
I mean, how can you not say Myles Turner? At least for the answer to that question. I mean, obviously the first thing that jumps out to you with him was the offense hitting the big shots. But the thing I'll leave that for you guys to talk about. But one thing that I want to touch on with him was just his level of aggression on defense was largely improved. He didn't have like an insane number of rebounds. I think Bennedict Mathurin was still our leading rebounder, but he did show a more intensified focus, I felt like, on that side of the ball. And even obviously, he didn't do a great job slowing Bam down if you just look at the box score. But watching the game, he didn't give Bam easy baskets like it did, like it felt like a couple nights ago. There was one play where I think where Bam took it inside on him and they really clashed down low. Bam ran right into him. Myles took the body shot, made him work for every basket. And I think after the effort and the energy that was so lackluster last game, that was a great, great sign that was reflected on both ends of the ball.
Yeah, I thought there was a great point of emphasis from him to really hit the glass hard. And I don't even think, when I say that, I don't even mean it with rebounding stats, right? I think he had 6 in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. So only 3 in the second half. But the way he was boxing out Bam was huge, right? And I think that you could just tell there was an increased level of physicality from Myles. And I personally like what he said after the game because there was a lot of, bad energy after the game against the Heat on Friday night. And the Pacers just got completely embarrassed. I think Myles Turner was a minus 29. I put a question out on Twitter and asked people, what do you think is the biggest problem with the Pacers this year? And everybody kind of kept going at Myles Turner. I was kind of shocked to see this many people, especially some of his longtime fans, having a lot of negative comments to say about him. But he said, you know what, publicly, I haven't liked my attitude the last few days. You've got to be an energy giver and take accountability. But I feel like I've kind of been an energy sucker, kind of been in my own feelings a little bit. He said that type of stuff's just negative. Obviously, it was a great game, just growing as a leader, growing as a man, but you can't put that stuff out into the universe. But I'm going to hold myself accountable for it. And David, I thought he did that tonight. I thought he really took a step forward in what you kind of hope Myles can be, because when Myles Turner plays good basketball, this team's a totally different team.
Yeah, and on top of everything else that you guys brought up about Myles and the aggression, the way that I first noticed that he was being aggressive was not in the rebounding, but in the tips and little taps that he's getting to the ball because he's boxing out well, like you already said, Alex, but he's able to tip the ball to Tyrese for a rebound or Mathurin for a rebound. I saw at least 3 or 4 of those in the first half alone that aren't going to be anything in the box score, but led to our rebound and avoided an offensive rebound. And so that level of physicality, that level of focus and aggression, while not like super like over the top, is like appropriate for a starting center in the NBA, and is the kind of thing that we really need from him consistently. And when he does that kind of stuff, that's just winning basketball stuff. That's just stuff that leads towards success.
No, it really does. And I think that we can go back and look at some of the games the Pacers have won this year that Myles Turner has played, and then just look at the stat line and say, man, when he's impactful in the stats, the Pacers usually win, right? So go back to last Sunday, right? The Pacers, Bennedict Mathurin had 38 points, Tyrese Haliburton had 35, but Myles Turner had 26 points in that game. He was huge in the pick and pop, really abused Karl Towns in that. 6 rebounds, 2 blocks against Orlando. A Wednesday night. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well. He was like 4 of 13 in that game, but he still had 17 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks. Obviously, the Dallas game, he always plays great in Dallas. That was kind of the breakout game for him. 30 points, 11 rebounds, 1 block. And then the opening night game against Detroit, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks. So the game that he didn't play in that the Pacers have won was the Celtics game, where they had a great game from Mathurin and Siakam. But it just kind of shows you, like, when Myles Turner is going offensively, he's going to be more engaged defensively. And I think that Pacer fans were right to kind of go at him a little bit, because he has seemed a little bit, disengaged, I guess you could say. Just, I don't know. Turner said he's been more invested in this year than he has in any other season that he's played. And I'm not sure if it's just because of the run to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, trying to prove himself, big contract year for him. But, they need him to play well. He played 40 minutes in this game tonight, matched every minute that Bam Adebayo played, and the Pacers have a back-to-back. So they play the Raptors, as you're probably listening to this tonight. And that's going to be tough on him, because that's a lot of minutes for a guy that's in his 10th year. But I think that if he can continue, Carson, just to kind of keep this, level head, this in his mind, that I got to hold myself accountable, I got to be a positive energy player, I think it's going to help him as this team tries to claw their way back from being, under 500.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned about the accountability is so huge, because obviously Myles is not the same type of leader that your Tyrese Haliburton is. He's not a face of the franchise type guy. However, that does not mean that this team does not need veteran leadership, because frankly, we have some of that in Pascal Siakam, not a super vocal leader from what we see. We don't know obviously how he is in the locker room, just kind of how it comes across. He just got here just last season. Tyrese is young. He is the face of the franchise. So it's nice to have somebody out on that court. You need Myles to be out there contributing and being vocal and bringing that great attitude every night. And like you just said, we're seeing it on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about Myles a little bit later, but I want to move forward now and talk about Bennedict Mathurin, David, because this season, in 13 games, he's already had 4 double-doubles. His first 2 seasons, 137 games played, he only had 3 ever in his career. So he's already surpassed it this season. Obviously, a bigger role with so many injuries to Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard. And then tonight, Ben Shepherd had an oblique injury, did not return to the game. Rick Carlisle said that his status for Monday night's game against Toronto is questionable. So we'll see how long he's out. But the Pacers obviously just down so many players at the wing position. But Bennedict Mathurin has gotten an opportunity here to take advantage of that playing time. And while he didn't have a great game against the Heat on Friday night, this game was awesome. I think Carlisle, the first person he mentioned individually was Mathurin, who was a plus 18 for the game, 21 points, 12 rebounds, hit some really timely baskets. What have you noticed from Mathurin, not just in this game, David, but just this season that's different than maybe in previous years?
I will say probably the easy thing to go to is rebounding. And to me, it was one of the first things that I noticed that made me think, you know what? I do believe that he is on board with Rick Carlisle's coaching method, because while a lot of fans, myself included, have at times been frustrated by the way that Rick has handled Mathurin, the fact that they have said many times that, hey, this is a point of emphasis for Bennedict Mathurin to get better at rebounding, which is funny because he's a shooting guard, basically. I mean, he can play some three, but, So the fact that he's doing it and he's clearly putting effort into it. I mentioned Myles tipping the ball a lot. I saw Mathurin. The only people that I saw tipping rebounds, to our teammates, were Myles and Mathurin. And so, 12 rebounds, that shows. And I mean, I don't want to steal all of the talking points for Mathurin today, but just the fact that we had a couple different players, Timmy Siakam was the other one, that I felt like had big stretches where I was like, kind of like, oh, like where have they been? What are they doing? Had some quiet stretches and still impacting and scoring. I mean, 10 shots and 21 points
Hmm.
is that's so important for this team when you have, people that can be streaky, can be hot and cold, different injury, all these different injury issues that we're having. To have somebody who you can just know, even if they aren't shooting 20 times in the game, they can still score because they can get to the rim and get to the free throw line and that kind of thing. So I just think the rebounding is the easy thing to point to. Um, and if you were just kind of casually watching the game, you might have thought Mathurin had 12 points. But 21 on 10 shots is super important.
That's a great point because I was going to say it felt like a pretty quiet night for Mathurin tonight. It did not feel like he was having this massive impact in the game. I know he had like 7 points in the third quarter. It was kind of him and the Turner show there. I think Turner had 9 early in the third quarter, but 8 of 8 from the free throw line. The starters combined go 17 of 17 from the free throw line, which is probably something we haven't seen all year. This team has struggled to make their free throws. So those points really matter in a game where you win by 9, but the game was close there at the end. So kudos to them for doing that. But Mathurin, I think that the free throws, like that's his specialty, right? His ability to get fouled, things like that. But Carson, Mathurin is a guy that you believed in from day one, and I know you've been very adamant about it. And I know that Caitlin Cooper put out a stat yesterday talking about Mathurin and Haliburton's numbers so far this season, and it's just like when they play well together, it's really a breath of fresh air because that's what you want to see. But there still has been some clunkiness to it. But overall, how do you think he's kind of shaped his game this year, shifted a little bit to fitting more of that, style the Pacers want to play next to Tyrese?
The big thing that I've noticed really is just he is a ready catch and shoot guy. His 3-point percentage is way up. And obviously, like when you think of Bennedict Mathurin, you're thinking kind of like slash get to the rim, go to the free throw line. That's what we saw his rookie year. Efficiency was kind of all over the place. Some really efficient games, other nights maybe not as much. But now he, like you guys said, when you're scoring a quiet 20 points on 10 shots, that's exactly the type of guy that you need next to Tyrese on a night-to-night basis, because that means he doesn't need the ball in his hands every single play. Tyrese can be your primary playmaker, but he can still finish those plays when Tyrese draws so much attention in the backcourt. So I think that is huge. And then the other component too that we've all kind of bounced back and forth that's been a talking point with Bennedict Mathurin is what do we do with the defensive, how he pairs with Tyrese on the defensive side of the floor. And as of the past few games, I think at least early in the season, even when he was doing better on offense, you'd still see a lapse here and then. But I feel like over the past few games, he's even taken a few extra strides on the defensive end of the floor. I think tonight there was a play where somebody cut backdoor on Mathurin and he defended it totally correctly, deflected the ball, got the steal, and then got the early kick out to Ben Shepherd for a 3. And the reason why that stood out to me is because last year in one of the Miami games that we played, I believe if I'm not mistaken, it was the one where we lost. There was a very similar play. Ben just got really poorly beat on a backdoor cut, wide open dunk or finish at the rim. And it was just like, man, that's the epitome of the Bennedict Mathurin experience thus far. And we're kind of seeing the paradigm shift of that tonight. So I think that was really refreshing for me to see.
That's a great point. I think that with Mathurin defensively, right, like I think his worst attribute defensively is off-ball defense. I think as an on-ball defender, he is pretty engaged. There's still times where I wish he would probably get a little bit skinnier on those screens. He has a hard time fighting, through those going over and just trying to make it more difficult. He's more like apt to switch quicker than maybe a Nembhard or a Nesmith are when they're playing out there. Even Shepherd, right? These guys are going to like fight through, get underneath those screens. But David, when I see Mathurin, growing as a defender, it makes me encouraged to see that he's taking strides. And even offensively, I think that there's been some really nice movements to his game. Like the very first play of the game, it was like Tyrese and Myles ran this action on the right side. And as Tyrese started to drive, the defense kind of sucked in, and Mathurin saw that and cut weak side for a wide open layup. And it's like more of those kind of plays where it's not just like, give me the ball up top, clear out, let me score. Like that's going to open up so much more of his offense. But I just think that you bring up some good points, Carson. Like, yeah, the defense is not where you want it to be at, but it is improving. And I think that for a guy that's in his third year, that's getting more of an opportunity now, and the Pacers are allowing him to kind of play through some of those mistakes because it's a necessity, number one, because of the guys that are out, but number two, he's been so good offensively, you don't want to take him off the floor. So, I just think, David, this is an opportunity for Mathurin to just kind of use these moments to grow and get better. But anything else that you want to add here from Mathurin in terms of offense or defense?
No, not much really. I will say I think that like the defensive end, if he can just be like solid, he doesn't even have to be a great defender. If he's just like an average defender, especially off ball, and then stays where he's at on ball, it's this kind of thing where it's like you can't get played off the court. And yes, sure, our offenses are specialty, offenses are MO, but we this season it seems like a lot more have had some issues with the offense. And so it's nice to have him in there to make up for that because he's been pretty consistent generally, offensively. But if you have Tyrese in there who struggles to get up to that average defensive standard a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times. And then you also have Mathurin if he's struggling defensively. How many teams in the NBA don't have at least one really good offensive player at the 1-2? It's pretty slim. So then if you have two guys, and that means that third person has to that person that third wing slash guard player has to be good defensively. So then it means you have to have Nemhard or Aaron Nesmith in there, or Shepard, who's not as good as the two of them, but is still solid. Like that's putting a lot of weight on their shoulders, and two of them are hurt now, and now Ben goes down. So we really need like both of them to not have really bad defensive games. And I think that like the difference between Friday and today for both of them actually defensively, I thought was wildly different. And if we can be more like what we were today defensively, especially in that first quarter, first half, I think we'll be in good shape.
I think a lot of it comes down to just playing hard and just,
Yeah.
I know that it sounds like it's very cliche, but it's just like when you put the effort in on both ends, you're going to notice it. And there are going to be times when guys are tired throughout a 82 game regular season, but like, they weren't playing on a back to back on Friday night. And that's what I think was so disappointing. It's just like the whole entire starting group just came out flat completely. And they just didn't seem like they were totally engaged. It felt like a totally different group. And part of that to me, I thought Tyrese looked decent in the first half against Miami on Friday night, but it was that second half where everything just, kind of went to crap. And the starters just slowly started losing it. And Kevin Love getting going. Like he only played 12 minutes tonight. Kevin Love, you barely felt him out there. I think he had a couple shots in the first quarter, and that was about it. But I think Tyrese Haliburton tonight was a totally different player. He didn't have to be the scorer, right? He did take 13 shots. He didn't shoot the ball well, 4-13, 3 of 8 from 3. So yeah, you don't love the stat line, but 16 points, 13 assists, 0 turnovers. It felt like he hit the big shots when he needed to, right? That fourth quarter was big. But you talked about the defense. I thought he had a great block on Tyler Hero, I believe it was, at the end of the game, too. So it might have been him or Duncan Robinson, but either way, he had a good block there to kind of close out hard and make sure that they didn't get another look off. And Carson, I know that Tyrese is kind of he's the face of the franchise, and he's going to be heavily criticized when they don't play well. But in this game tonight, didn't have to be the leading scorer. What did you think of his game?
I thought it was still a great game to see from him, despite the 4 and 13 shooting, because so far we have seen, oh man, like we've had these games where it's like Tyrese is pretty poor on the defensive end, and then the shot's not falling, and then the offense isn't really clicking, and it's like it's tough to really look at the game and be like, where is his mark on the game? And I think we're all in agreement that the Pacers they're not going very far if Tyrese's mark isn't on the game. And even though he shot 4 for 13 in this game, his mark was still on the game. And I think that is huge. That is really, when I watch this team play, that's the number one thing I need to see is what impact has Tyrese Haliburton had. And so despite, again, 4 of 13 shooting, what did he do? He had 13 assists. The offense was really clicking at times. He had 0 assists. I think this game, if I remember correctly, based off of what I saw on social media, he passed Mike Conley for the most, was it double-digit assists, 0 turnover games?
I think so. Him and Stockton and Chris Paul are the only 3, I think, with multiple.
Right.
I forget how many exactly, but
Yeah. So I think of active players, Chris Paul is the only player he's chasing. And so that's just great to see. That's what you need to see. And then even this year, he has hit big shots. He's continued to do so even in bad games. So it was nice to continue to see that as well.
David, any other thoughts on Tyrese Haliburton and his play tonight?
I just really appreciated that he stayed aggressive and stayed like I feel like I don't think he gets I think checked out is too harsh of a term, but we've seen a lot of games this year where his shot's not falling. I think he gets frustrated, and I don't know if he gets in his own head or what, but it feels like his shot's not falling, and then all of a sudden he's playing off ball and he's not driving to the hoop at all, or trying to get a mid-range look, or trying to create an open three for somebody else. And he has fewer assists in those games. We can look at multiple games this year already where that's been the case. And so to see a game where he shot poorly, I mean, from three, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't what you see in his good games. And yet he, like we've said before already, 13 assists and 16 points in a bad shooting game specifically. But he's staying plugged in with the assists and is played pretty solid defense. I mean, no one's ever going to be like, oh man, defensive player of the game, Tyrese Haliburton. He's the best defender in this game for the Pacers. That's probably never going to happen, and that's fine. But like you said, he had a good block in the fourth. That was if that shot goes in, do we win still? Probably. But that was when that block happened. I was like, okay, that's game. That's for sure game. Like, it doesn't matter what else happens. We won the game here. And those are important plays, and he's sneaky with his blocks and steals. I mean, he had 2 blocks this game, the same number as Myles Turner. So that kind of stuff, which that's not a jab at Myles Turner. It's just saying like, uh, those are the stats that I want to see from Halliburton, the steals and the blocks. Those things are the things that show me that he is putting forth the effort on defense, even though he's not always going to be as successful as your Aaron Nesmith or Andrew Nimhard, players like that.
Yeah, I mean he's 6'5", right? So he does have some size to him in terms of like length and his wingspan. I forget what it is, but like he has a pretty, good reach out there. So I mean, I like the fact that he's been a little bit more aggressive on contesting shots. It feels like he's doing a better job of that. But this is the first game all season long where he's had 0 turnovers in a game. So you would like to hopefully see more of that. And, you're not going to get mad about 1 or 2 turnovers here and there. It's like he's got the ball in his hands all the time. And I know people have even said we want to see it in his hands more. But like I looked at a usage rate stat that was on Twitter a couple of days ago, and he was still like, I think, at least top 10 in terms of how many times he's got the ball in his hand. So it's like it's not like he's not being utilized how fans want him to be. But some of it's just not been like him being this aggressive scorer. Like he came out really aggressive looking to score against Miami on Friday night. But I thought that, I think it was Rick Carlisle, maybe it was Myles, who talked about how Pascal and Tyrese really led the film watching session that they had on Saturday's practice after that Heat game to kind of just let them know, like, we got to do things differently. And I think that those two guys really responded well. And so that kind of helps me transition here to Pascal Siakam, who was phenomenal in this game, but it was like kind of like under the radar a little bit because of how good Myles' game was. And it was like when all 4 starters that are like your key players play really well, you're seldom going to lose those games. But Pascal Siakam, I think 15,000 career points tonight, ended up passing that.
I think it was 10.
10,000, excuse me, 10. I don't know where I got 15. We're getting there, Pascal. We'll be there eventually. But 10,000 career points, really special moment for him. Thank you for correcting me on that. But it was just great to see him have a good game. And I think Carson, he's probably been the most consistent player all season long, but didn't have a good game against Miami. But when your leader is kind of trying to figure things out and this team is trying to figure out where they're going, like having a leader like Pascal Siakam come out there and kind of set the tone is massive for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it says a lot about him that it's like how because let's be real, he did not, I mean, nobody really did, but especially Pascal did not have a great game against Miami the other night. What does he do? He comes out and goes 9 for 11, doesn't miss from the free throw line, which has been an area of struggle with the team and even him. I don't even think he missed a 3. I think his only 2 missed shots were inside the arc, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
He missed 1 3.
Okay, so he missed 1 3. But then, and while he did foul out of the game, six personal fouls, one area that I've kind of been interested in because Myles has slightly regressed on defense, maybe not as agile as what he used to be, is well, what does it mean if Pascal is also not on the top of his game on the defensive end? So that's something I've been keeping an eye out on. And tonight the fouls didn't really hurt, but what I at least can draw from that is he's at least being aggressive on defense. And I would much rather see Pascal get a hand in there, especially when the ball's down low and there's a scrummage for the ball. Swipe for it, go in there, get involved in the defense, get scrappy. There's a reason you get 6 fouls. Let's use some of them as long as we're not in the bonus by the 5 minutes left in the quarter. I think that was it showed an intensified effort on his part, I thought, tonight.
I was a little bit worried when he fouled out just because, it didn't matter as much when he did, but like he was very close to picking up that sixth foul with like 2 minutes left, and the Pacers were already thin without Shepard, Neesmith, and Nimhard. So you're like, oh man, we just keep losing these wings, these front court players. Like, where are the Pacers going to go? Like, Quentin Jackson might have to close this game out if we're not careful. So, and I like Quentin Jackson. I think he got an appreciation tweet from me tonight because I love his energy. I really do. He just comes in the game. He's like, man, this guy's fun to watch. I know he's not great, but you like the energy, you like the effort. But Pascal Siakam, David, tell me a little bit more about what you saw from his game tonight. Maybe some things that stood out to you that maybe even more than just tonight's game. If you want to elaborate just a little bit more on like him as a player for this team this season.
I think like to me, the big thing this season has been like we kind of said a little bit. He's the stability factor, and really where I see that is offensively. He, especially given the fact that Tyrese has had some inconsistent games and some just different issues. We don't know, how much is it mental, how much is it his back, but he's been a lot better recently outside of Friday night. But up until that point, Siakam has just been a rock offensively. You just give him the ball, go to work. He'll find open guys, or he'll hit a mid range jumper or get a free throw shot if he drives to the rim. We've discussed offline about his whistle seems to be a little bit suspicious around the rim. He doesn't seem to get as many foul calls as you would like, but he can do that. And tonight to see him, we've had games in the past where you feel like, man, why did he only have 11, 12 shots? He should have had like 18 shots, 20 shots. Like, what are we doing? And tonight you could have said that. If we lose this game, I feel like one of the biggest headlines would be Pascal Siakam was 9 of 11. Why didn't he shoot 11 times and not more? And because he fouled out pretty late in the game, it wasn't like he fouled out at the beginning of the fourth quarter or anything like that. So, given the fact that he's able to be incredibly efficient, which is a part of why he's that stabilizing factor, but to not require and to, he's a champion. He's an all-pro level player, and he can take 11 shots and be happy with that and play aggressive on defense. I'm like, okay, like that's pretty good stuff. And one of those fouls, they called him for a blocking foul that I was like, that might have been a charge if it wasn't Bam Adebayo that was delivering the physic. If it was, some random scrub NBA player, it probably would have been a reversed call. And we didn't challenge it because we've already challenged 2 times in that game. So just love the consistency you got to, and to love the fact that he can just he takes what we give him and gives his best, and you're never worried about him being a diva, and there's just a lot of positivity there.
I will say this, Pascal Siakam is probably one of my favorite people to hear from in a post-game press conference because he's very candid with his answers. I know Myles Turner was very candid tonight with everything he had to say in terms of like reflecting on himself, but like Pascal Siakam, like I forget who asked him the question, but they asked him about, how TJ McConnell was able to kind of come in there and defend against Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and how difficult it is to guard those guys. And he just flat out said, he's like, yeah, when Bam's setting illegal screens all night, it's hard to fight through that. And it's just like, he just called him out for it. And I loved it because, a lot of guys in the league set illegal screens, but like Bam probably gets away with a lot more just because of the reputation. And if you called it every time, like you mentioned it, Bam probably gets more calls just because of his, star tier, I guess you could say. So it was just funny that he said it. I don't think he meant it in like a negative way, like he was mad at Bam or anything like that. But like, it's hard to guard guys like that when they're setting tough screens like that and moving. So that's partially probably why. And I know when he got switched on to Bam too, like you could definitely feel the size advantage because Pascal's not this like super stocky guy. He's pretty lean. That he's long and lanky. That's what he is. And you need Myles to kind of match up with Bam because I think it's a pretty good matchup for Myles, surprisingly. But I'm looking here at the stat sheet, and I'm a little bit like, it's just hilarious to me. Like Myles Turner had more made field goals in this game than anybody else had shot attempts. I just find that fascinating. So it's just like, Myles had himself a heck of a game, and he was shooting the ball. I mean, 23 shot attempts from Turner is not something you're used to seeing, but 14 made shot attempts, 14 made field goals is more than anybody else attempted individually. But Carson, anybody else you want to bring up from this game that you thought, really stood out to you?
He didn't get a ton of minutes. He also didn't really wow on really either, I guess, on the offensive side of the floor. But Jarris Walker's rebounding, I felt like was huge. and he had a shot that was massive that I wanted to point out because I feel like we talk about games like this and we talk about how important it like how there's moments in games that are always super important. Obviously, we think of clutch time minutes and we think about closing quarters and things like that. But in this game, there was a stretch where I think it was right in the third quarter. We got a bit of a lead and it was time for Pascal and Myles to get a bit of a breather. And Jarris is in the game at this point. The Heat cut the lead to I think 11. It was kind of fluctuating, and there was a possession where Tyrese hits Jarris in the corner, and he knocks down a huge three. And just the very play before, I think Jaime Hawkes missed a three, and so we go from having this. We're currently have a 11-point lead. Almost it would have gone down to 8 had that three gone down. Jarris goes down to the end of the floor, just hits the open shot. That's what we needed him to do. Hits it in the corner, and that was such a huge play. Just because when you go from really it's a 6-point swing when they're ready to cut it to 8, and then all of a sudden you get that lead back to 14, and then I think the very next possession Ben may have gotten a layup to get it to 16. But when your bench or when you have guys like that on come off your bench, give you minutes like that, give you rebounding, make those plays, hit those shots. That was one of those shots in like a chunk of those minutes that I feel like if that like 45 seconds goes differently, then maybe we're having a very different conversation tonight.
Yeah, it's small guys in smaller roles that can make a big difference, even though the box score doesn't show it right. And that's kind of how I feel like Walker's impact has been all season long. I did hear from somebody today at the game that he was pretty down on himself after the 7 turnovers. The team didn't play well. I thought he actually played decent despite the 7 turnovers in the Friday night game, especially with the bench unit. He did some good things, but it's a growing period for him. And I think people kind of forget that sometimes with young players. It just takes time to continue to get those reps and grow as a player. Like I think the same thing could be said about Anthony Richardson, right? With the Colts. Like young player, 22 years old. I think Walker's younger than that. And you're kind of being thrust into this position. Like obviously quarterback's totally different than what Jarris is playing, but I'm just saying in general for young guys, like they're going to have ups, they're going to have downs, and it's patience that is important here. But David, I felt like a guy that really made a difference in tonight's game was TJ McConnell. I just felt like there were so many little things that he did to really impact the game, especially at the end of the game. So what were you seeing from TJ and how he played?
Well, first of all, I was honestly pretty impressed by all 4 of the bench players that played. Really thin, um, and to have all 4 of them come in, don't really have a lot of room for error in a game that we won by 9. And so to have all of them come in, and although I think that on the plus minus they were probably all negative, but it felt like they were like making winning plays.
Yeah.
TJ, he was always making winning plays. I mean, he's had some rough games, so I shouldn't say always. He had a couple of games where you feel like he's, maybe feeling a little bit gassed. I don't know if it's the increase in minutes due to some of the injuries and that kind of thing. But today he was great. He guarding Tyler Hero for stretches in the fourth quarter and doing so pretty well. I mean, he was super hot. Like there was a lot of shots that he just hit, and you're like, well, okay, like I don't know what you're gonna do. He's just gonna hit that shot. Like you can't do a whole lot else. Some of them was bad defense, but many of them I was just like, well, that's just gonna happen from a player like Tyler Hero when he gets hot. So you can't totally fault TJ for that, especially given the fact that he's probably given up a little bit of size to Hero there. But 4 of 8 and a couple of really big baskets in the fourth quarter. The one in the mid range, I was just like, I was on my couch literally saying, shoot it, DJ, please shoot it. Like that was his shot. It's like that's the one we need. He drives in, cuts to the middle of the paint and fades away and hits those shots. And then the one a few minutes later where the Red Sea just parted and they just let him walk to the basket. And I was like, okay, well, there we go. There's the game probably. That kind of stuff while also being able to bring up 5 assists, like 5 assists in 20-ish minutes, just like plays hard, gives everything, and makes winning plays. You don't never really have to worry about it. I was at the game on Friday actually, and this guy
I'm
sitting next
sorry.
to me. Yeah, I know that was I should have flipped it, but whatever. Cole Curse is still alive, I guess. So the the guy next to me who I didn't get a great look at him, but you wouldn't have thought he'd be a big TJ McConnell fan for different reasons. I heard him hit the girl next to him, "This is my favorite player." I looked down to see who was checking in. It was TJ McConnell. And he says he just makes all the right plays. You never have to worry about him doing anything stupid. Like this guy's just like hyping up TJ McConnell. And sure, was Friday the best game from TJ and anybody really? No. But the point still stands. Like this guy just does all the right stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in the fourth quarter, 6 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and he only played. Well, he did play 10 minutes, but I mean, I think part of the reason why is because they were without Shepard, and Jarris Walker played 1 minute in the fourth. Quentin Jackson played 2:31. It was like you had to rely a lot on a smaller rotation, and he was impactful. He ended up being a +1 for that group. I think the best plus minus in that quarter was Tyrese Haliburton, who was a +4 in the fourth, where the Pacers did get outscored by 1 point, and Mathurin was a +4 as well. So those two together, I'm sure they played about the same amount of time. I think they checked back in together around the same time. So that would make some sense. But yeah, I mean, TJ McConnell, I thought that those 2 rebounds he had, they were on back-to-back possessions. He had an offensive rebound that kicked it out to Tyrese for the three. Next possession down, Heat missed. He got the defensive rebound. Tyrese hit the next three. The Pacers go back up by 6 after they had just, surrendered the lead to a tie. So it was nice to see him kind of impact the game. And I think Rick Carlisle even mentioned that layup you talked about. That was like the turning point a little bit, or the game changer there. I think it ended up making the Pacers lead go from 3 to 5. So just little things like that are big, and you don't realize how important they are. But we got to get to our MVP of the game, our clutch player of the game, and our feisty Foster hustle player of the game. So Carson, David, I'll let you guys be the award givers tonight. I will just let you guys do it. I'll do it every game moving forward probably. So it'll be nice to have someone else do it. So Carson, you can start us off with your Mel Daniels MVP for tonight's game. Who do you think it is? And David, you can chip in after that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can not go with Myles Turner, the guy who had more made field goals than anybody else had shot attempts. That is a crazy stat. I don't think that's ever happened, and I don't think it'll ever happen again. I don't hope it happens again, really. I guess if he's letting it fly and he's knocking them down. But yeah, I think there's no one else that can really compete with him for this award tonight.
Yeah,
David, what do you think?
yeah, it's easy. It's Myles Turner. I can make an argument for, but it's just me trying to be devil's advocate. So Myles Turner gets it.
Okay. And then for our clutch player, this is where it could be kind of interesting, but who do you guys think should be the clutch player of the game? David, you go first.
I think you have to go Tyrese Haliburton for the 2 threes at the tie game point. If you miss one of those and Tyler Hero inevitably hits a three, the game could be over. It could be over the other way. So those two big shots, especially when you were 4 of 13 going in, and like what, 1 of 6 from three before that, like to come in and hit those last two, it's pretty huge.
Carson, you agree?
Absolutely. In the words of Worldwide Wob, it's always Halliburton.
That's right.
So yeah, and I think anytime you're in clutch time minutes and you hear Quinn yelling on the broadcast, "Give me one," and it's Tyrese getting ready to line up a 3-point shot, man, you get the chills. You already know it's going down.
Did you see that the Pacers set up a GoPro for Chris and Quinn? It was a Chris and Quinn cam, and they shared like a 45-second clip after the Pacers won of some of Quinn Buckner and his calls after Chris is always going to set up Quinn, right? Quinn's always going to come in there with the one-liners, the fun little quotes. Chris is just going to keep professional, and Quinn's going to have fun with it. But I love it because Quinn's watching the monitor. He's not even watching the live action game. He's watching the monitor to make sure he doesn't miss anything. And I forget what they said exactly, but it was great stuff. So I agree with you guys both so far. I think if I were giving out the awards, that would be what I would do as well. Turner MVP, Haliburton clutch player. But I think this feisty Foster hustle player of the game is really up for grabs. There's 2 players I think deserve it, but I'll be interested to see what you guys agree on here. So we'll go back to you, David. Who do you think should be the feisty Foster hustle? That's a tough one there. Feisty Foster, hustle player of the game.
I think you can make an argument for a few different people. I'm gonna go with Benedict Mathurin and a couple different things. Number one, the 12 rebounds, pretty big. Number two, efficient stat line, and I cannot get out of my head. We haven't talked about it yet. The moment of Tyler Hero just jawing at Mathurin while he's shooting free throws, and Mathurin's like stone cold, no reaction, doesn't care, doesn't hear it, like whatever. I'm hitting these free throws. Shut up. Like, oh, like that to me is like that's what I want to see from him. So I'm going there.
Carson?
Man, this is tough. I initially was gonna go TJ McConnell because of obviously he had some massive plays in this game. And one thing that we didn't really get to with him, and maybe this was my imagination, but it looked like I don't know if it was on that screen where he absolutely got leveled. I think it was, but I think he played several minutes tonight where he was hurt. I'm interested to see if that shows up on an injury report, especially with how many guys were down. But I think TJ was playing through some things tonight, especially after that screen that he took. And he was holding his shoulder. I think it was at the end of the third where Jarris maybe had a pretty rough turnover to end the quarter. And TJ just wasn't even involved in the action. He was like off to the side holding his shoulder, not interested in even touching the ball. So got to give him credit for playing through that. However, since Benedict Mathurin is an absolute dog, he is one of my favorite players in the NBA. I don't know, there's just something about him. Being the Kobe fan that I am, I see so much of that in him, and it just anytime I watch him play, I get a goofy, stupid smile on my face. And so I think David convinced me that I'll throw my hat in the ring for Benedict Mathurin.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. Exactly the two guys that should be up for the Feisty Foster hustle player of the game. And I actually was leaning Mathurin myself just because of how timely those rebounds were that he had. I mean, there was a couple where he just kind of skied in traffic and got some. And it's just like, that is exactly what Foster would do, right? And he just stepped up. I mean, McConnell could probably win this award every single game. So we don't want to just be, prejudiced or biased, I guess you could say, and be like, okay, this is the McConnell award, so we're just going to give it to him. I think Mathurin was definitely deserving of that. And you bring up a good point about that play because I think Myles Turner actually took accountability for that one as well and said that he didn't call out a screen. It might have been Pascal that set up, but I thought it was Myles that he did not call out a screen for TJ. And, he got leveled, but he played through it. And that's just the kind of the guy that he has, the toughness that he brings every single night. And that's why David, that fan, was saying that's why TJ McConnell's their favorite player. Pacer fans love when guys play hard and they leave it all out on the court. And so I think, we want to see the Pacers win, but I think we want to see them play, quote unquote, the right way too. So TJ McConnell usually does that. So as we wrap it up, I don't have anything else really extra to add. A big game tomorrow against Toronto. They're not playing very well. I forget what the record is overall. It might be like 2-12, something like really bad like that. But this is a team that has been, like we talked about, maybe off air, maybe a little bit on here as well. They've been playing better. So this is not going to be an easy game for the Pacers, especially on the second night of a back-to-back where you had guys play some significant minutes like Haliburton, 38, Turner, 40, Mathurin, 37. So a lot of heavy minutes there. But as we kind of sign off here, Carson, anything else you want to add before we go?
Don't think so. I just think this game was really encouraging to see. I think we pretty much covered everything, but just the energy was so much better. And that's really, at the end of the day, what you want to see the most is that the team comes out and executes the right way.
David?
Yeah, I think that energy, if we can have that carry over against Toronto, they're a little undermanned. They're also, made some moves and some trades to, try to go a little younger, maybe try to have a little more long-term vision with their success. So because of that, if we can come out with the energy we had today, I think we can go out on a big lead and maybe give our guys a little bit of a rest. I think if it's a close game and if it's a long game, it could be tough. But if we can get out early with this level of energy and fight, then it's a game I think we can definitely win, even though it's a back-to-back and even though we're a little shorthanded. So that's what I'll be looking for in the first quarter tomorrow.
And I think Pascal Siakam is going to be excited to go back to Toronto and play in that game. I think that's always kind of a fun to see when you see a guy go back and play against his former team. I know that he did it last year, but it still probably means so much to him to be in Toronto. And then the last thing that we did not touch on, and I'm sorry I brought this up at the very last second, but the white jerseys, the new City Edition jerseys. I mean, they looked pretty fresh to me. I did like the white zip ups for the coaches with the black pants. I thought they looked great. So, Carson, big question here. Number one, do you love the white jerseys? And if you do you like them better than the black ones?
Man, that's tough. I have so many amazing memories, especially being in person for that Boston in-season tournament game that like I see those black jerseys and I think Tyrese Haliburton, 4-point play, I think Bennedict Mathurin. So it's tough, but I think in a vacuum, I actually do like the white jerseys more, especially I don't know if you all saw the kicks that Bennedict Mathurin and Pascal Siakam were rocking tonight.
Mm-hmm.
The light blue accents, those were tough. So I got to go with the white jerseys.
I agree. I saw those up close during warmups, and I said, "Ooh, those are nice. Those fit perfectly. The colorways are just great. They're matching with the uniform." David, black, white. What did you like better?
It's super close. I think it's like 51-49. I think I'm gonna go white, but I do love the black too. The white ones, they look really good. That opening, that like preview video or whatever they posted, the marketing for those jerseys was really good. And they look great on the guys. So I'm probably gonna go white, but it's close.
Yeah, 3 for 3. I think the white ones were a little bit cleaner to me. I just liked them a little bit better. The black ones are awesome. I mean, obviously they were really good last year in terms of how people responded to them, and they kind of hinted a little bit with the white ones, obviously all off season long, but really cool to see them utilize that court once again that they had made specifically for those black jerseys. And I think they're going to wear them like 20 some times this season. So you're going to be seeing a lot of these white jerseys. I thought they looked very nice. And hey, they're undefeated in them so far. So that's a good thing, right? We just can't wear them on Friday nights, apparently, because the Pacers cannot win on any Fridays this year. It's been absolutely horrific watching them play on Friday nights. So, David, that doesn't sit well for us as we'll be in Milwaukee together watching the Bucks, Pacers on Friday night. But hey, maybe we can kick that Cole curse to the curb. Pacers can get a NBA Cup win. And you know what? It's good to see the Pacers got a win for Facci on his birthday. So once again, everybody, make sure you guys wish Facci a happy birthday at _FACCI. But Carson, David, you guys know how we end this show. So if you guys are both hoping the Pacers can get back to 500 with a victory over the Toronto Raptors,